Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
The coronavirus pandemic, the economy, unemployment, healthcare, racism, urban violence, the Supreme Court. So many issues and so much for voters to process. Many have done such processing already, with tens of millions having already cast their ballots in this year like no other. Here for one final shot to review the bidding as we count down the hours to Tuesday is our old friend, LibertyNation.com political columnist Joe Schaeffer. Pleasure to have you back, Joe.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. So, Joe, what issue is most likely to animate voters the most? In ordinary years, it would probably be the economy. Well, what about the pandemic and health care and Trump's personality?
You know, I think you can just split it right along red-blue lines because I just think that's how divided this country is. If you're on the red lines, Joe Biden's corruption, the Hunter Biden thing is right in your wheelhouse. This is why you voted for Donald Trump in 2016. This is why you want to vote for him again in 2020. So drain the swamp. Let's give him 4 more years to clean house. That is what's getting the Trump voters motivated. If you're a Biden voter, it's quite simply you don't like Donald Trump. It's anti-Trump. That's pretty much everything that Biden and even Kamala Harris have been running on. Yeah, they throw in the coronavirus every now and again, but it's mostly just to hit Donald Trump more than anything. What that means for undecided voters, I don't know, but I really don't think there's a lot of undecided voters. I think this cake is baked. I think people know where they stand for the most part in this country today.
Does the fact of the early vote actually benefit either party? Does the fact that more Democrats have voted up to now than Republicans hold any meaning? And does record absentee and mail-in voting change the actual nature of the election or just the amount of time it'll take to count all the votes?
I think it helps the Democrats, if anything, their whole machinery of getting out the vote. This is not a guy who motivates you to get out and vote, Joe Biden. So they have to have a whole operation. And, you know, I think the average time of early voting is 22 days before the election. Well, look what happened with this Hunter Biden thing. It exploded, you know, within that window. Millions of people had already voted. And then this laptop bombshell comes along. You know, I don't know how much weight to put into this, but conservatives were saying there was a spike in Google searches for how do I change my vote. But, you know, even if that's not true or an exaggeration, it brings up a good point. You can't change your vote in a lot of these cases. And, you know, that's why I don't really like early voting that far out, maybe 4 or 5 days before the election. But so many things can still happen. The Hunter Biden thing did come along. So I do think it helps Democrats and it helps them with their organizing as well.
Well, due to the pandemic and people intensely worried about their own lives and futures, not to mention the outbreak of widespread urban violence, the killing of George Floyd, we've had a truncated presidential campaign, which didn't really start in earnest until a few weeks ago, and the candidates can't exactly campaign the way they usually do. Do you think that means these last days and hours leading up to Election Day hold more significance than in most years?
We're in a country now with so much turmoil, so much division and unrest. We're in 365-day-a-year campaign mode. It's going to keep going no matter who's elected president. The 2024 campaign starts in mid-January of 2021. It's ridiculous and it's crazy, but that's where we are. So based on that, to me, it's hard to say that, these last few days are crucial. I mean, we've been in a campaign war nonstop since Trump went down that escalator in the summer of 2015, it seems. And nothing's going to change no matter who wins. It's just going to keep going this way.
To what extent do we think that people voting for Joe Biden might actually be saying yes to a Kamala Harris presidency? And is that a plus or minus for Joe Biden?
I think that only works in the progressive blue circles, that urbanite environment that they've got locked up. You know, if you look at the Electoral College maps, it's all the same. They've had that Northeast corridor, that Boston to Washington, D.C. corridor locked up. They've got the West Coast vote locked up. So, you know, it really comes down to, like it did in 2016, these Rust Belt states, And I just don't see who in those Rust Belt states are saying, gee, I want Kamala Harris. So I never understood why she was on the ticket in the first place. And I don't even think she's much of a factor unless people are scared off by her and saying, I don't want to vote for this. But helping Biden, I don't see how she helps Biden at this point.
What kind of personal theories do you have about the election which may not be common to most people?
Demographic change. I just don't think people are talking about it enough. If the Republicans are going to lose, that is going to be the overwhelming reason. If Donald Trump was to lose Florida, I would look at demographic change as the number one reason.
And if he loses Florida, he loses the election. That's pretty
Absolutely.
clear. So we can't let you go without your fearless election prediction, Joe, for both the popular vote and in the Electoral College. Be as precise as possible, please.
Well, I always looked at it. I think it's the same electoral map as 2016, where Biden needs to capture the Rust Belt just like Hillary, and Hillary failed. And the interesting thing is Democrats are trying to spin this like, oh, yeah, it is the same map, but Biden's outperforming Hillary. I don't see any reason to believe that. I see Biden underperforming. I see him losing Pennsylvania, losing Michigan. And to me, that wraps it up. I'm going to say it. I say Trump goes over 300 electoral college votes.
All right, Joe. Well, we'll weigh your prediction against the actual outcome next time we have you back. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Joe Schaeffer, LibertyNation.com.